Outback Steakhouse was one of the biggest casual dining success stories in the United States during the 1990s. The first location opened in Tampa, Florida, in 1988. Within just over a decade, the brand had expanded to more than 500 restaurants across the country, along with dozens of international locations. That kind of growth was rare in casual dining at the time. The momentum was strong enough that in the early 2000s, Warren Buffett became a notable investor, purchasing close to 2 million shares of the company. At its peak, Outback wasn't just popular, it became the largest steakhouse chain in the United States and one of the most recognizable casual dining brands in the country. But over time, that success began to fade. Since 2012, Outback Steakhouse has operated under a parent company called Bloomin' Brands, named after its most famous menu item, the Bloomin' Onion. The group also owns other restaurant chains, including Carrabba's Italian Grill, Bonefish Grill, and the higher-end Fleming's Prime Steakhouse. Outback remains the core of the company, accounting for more than half of its total revenue. Despite that, Bloomin' Brands has experienced a dramatic decline in value in recent years. Between early 2024 and late 2024, the company's market capitalization dropped from roughly $2.5 billion to around $600 million. Major leadership changes followed, including the appointment of a new CEO in 2024. Sales levels fell to their lowest point outside of the pandemic year, and Outback itself began quietly pulling back. Locations were closed, including several long-standing restaurants that had been part of the brand since its early expansion. So how did a chain that once defined casual dining lose so much ground? There isn't one single reason. Instead, a series of decisions spread across branding, strategy, operations, and focus slowly weakened the business. One of the most obvious factors is Outback's identity. From the beginning, Outback Steakhouse leaned heavily into an Australian theme. Accents, decor, menu names, and marketing all pointed to the idea of the Australian Outback. Yet the food itself had almost nothing to do with Australian cuisine. That was intentional. The founders avoided traveling to Australia because they didn't want real cultural exposure to influence the menu. The concept wasn't authenticity, it was novelty. The inspiration came largely from pop culture, especially movies like Crocodile Dundee, which made Australia feel exciting and adventurous to American audiences in the late 1980s. At the time, that worked. The late 1980s and 1990s were filled with themed restaurants. Dining out was as much about the experience as the food, and novelty helped chains stand out. Outback fit perfectly into that environment. But novelty doesn't age well. As tastes changed, heavily themed restaurants lost appeal. Many brands built on spectacle rather than substance struggled to remain relevant. And Outback's Australian identity began to feel less like a differentiator and more like a gimmick. What once felt fun slowly started to feel outdated. At the same time, competition intensified. Casual dining as a category has been under pressure for years. Fast casual chains changed consumer expectations around speed, convenience, and price. Customers became less willing to sit down for long meals, especially at higher prices. Several legacy casual dining brands collapsed or entered bankruptcy. But even within the steakhouse segment, Outback lost its edge. Texas Roadhouse and Longhorn Steakhouse gained momentum while Outback fell behind. Texas Roadhouse, in particular, surged ahead and now generates roughly double the revenue of Outback. Longhorn also overtook Outback, pushing it into a lower position among steakhouse chains. Both competitors leaned into American regional themes and positioned themselves clearly around value and experience. Compared to that, Outback's Australian branding felt less connected to what customers were actually looking for. Value perception became another major problem. Over time, average check sizes at Outback increased, reaching close to $30 per guest. Meanwhile, competitors offered lower prices, complimentary items, and environments that felt newer and more energetic. Many Outback locations showed their age. Renovations lagged, interiors felt dated, and customers increasingly questioned whether the experience justified the price. Rankings and surveys reflected this shift in perception, with Outback often scoring poorly compared to its peers. The company eventually acknowledged the issue, announcing renovation investments and moving away from short-term promotional tactics. Previous strategies relied heavily on limited-time offers that boosted traffic temporarily, but failed to build long-term loyalty. Comparable restaurant traffic declined for much of the past decade. Operational decisions also played a role. Early in its history, Outback was known for efficiency and focus. The founders believed in simplicity. Restaurants were closed during lunch hours because lunch crowds were less profitable and harder on staff. That decision also allowed Outback to operate in lower rent areas away from business districts. Managers were given autonomy, staffing models were tight, and menus were relatively focused. Over time, many of those principles eroded. Lunch service was added nationwide in 2015, complicating operations without clear benefits. Staffing ratios worsened before later being corrected. Table payment kiosks were introduced. Menus expanded dramatically, increasing complexity for both staff and customers. Only recently has the company begun reversing course, cutting menu items and attempting to simplify operations again. But by then, years of operational drift had already taken a toll. Another issue was divided attention. Outback didn't just grow its flagship brand. It built an entire portfolio of restaurant concepts. Carrabba's Italian Grill was acquired in the 1990s, followed by Bonefish Grill in the early 2000s. The strategy was to create new growth paths once Outback saturated the market. While those acquisitions brought diversification, they also split focus and resources. Critics have long argued that expanding into multiple concepts weakened Outback itself, especially as the core brand began to struggle. Instead of doubling down on fixing Outback's issues early, attention was spread across several businesses, each with its own challenges. Finally, reputation damage accumulated over time. Outback faced a series of controversies over the years, including labor disputes, discrimination lawsuits, and isolated incidents that generated negative headlines. None of these alone destroyed the brand, but together they contributed to a slow erosion of trust and goodwill. Public perception matters in casual dining, and once a brand's image starts to weaken, it becomes much harder to justify higher prices or premium positioning. Outback Steakhouse is still operating, and efforts are being made to stabilize the business. Restaurants are being renovated, menus simplified, and leadership is attempting to refocus on fundamentals. But its story is a clear example of how long-term success depends on consistent decisions. Branding choices, operational discipline, competitive positioning, and strategic focus compound over time, for better or worse. Outback didn't fail because of one mistake. It declined because a series of small decisions slowly pulled the brand away from what made it successful in the first place. If this analysis helped you see business differently, subscribe to Founder Decisions and stay connected for more real-world case studies and decision